Hello, my dear listeners. How are you all? Yesterday we have completed the reading of Folk Tales of Bengal written by Reverend Lal Bihari Dey. So, today we're initiating a book, a very old book. The name of that book is Bengal Fairy Tales. This book was written by Francis Bradley-Burt, and this book was illustrated by Abanindranath Thakur. This book was first published in the year 1920. So I am taking this book, the stories from the source wiki source, which you can see. So let's start. Before starting this, I would like to repeat one guideline which has been bestowed upon me by my father, that fairy tales actually they build up a strong character within each individual from from its very beginning or from its childhood. So that is the motto why I am reading all these fairy tales, either in English or in my mother tongue, which is Bengali, or in Hindi. So please spread this. Please spread this age old practice of telling fairy tales to our children, so that we can so that they can live their childhood without forecasting any suggestive figures. I'm not against animation, but they must have some space so that they can imagine. So that space is provided by fairy tales. So with this initial statement, let's start. Let's dig into Bengal fairy tales. This is the opening book structure, picture, Bengali fairy tales, and this is a very good, very famous illustration by Abanindranath Thakur, the man who was enriched by accident. We will read. This book was published by John Lane, the Bodley Head, New York John Lane Company. And acha, I must say the stories which are here in this book are categorized in four parts. The first part is stories told by Bhabugure. Bhabugure means the wanderer, the traveler. So let's start. Let's go to the first story, The Four Riddles. An emperor of the olden days in India once sent a messenger to one of his tributary rajas, Prithu by name, to ask him four questions. These were: can there be poison in nectar? Can there be nectar in poison? Can there be a dog in human shape? Is it possible for a donkey to rule a kingdom? On the answering right of these questions depended the tributary Raja's life, for the emperor's order was that in case of failure the Raja should forfeit his head. The time granted to him for returning an answer was 3 months, and the first 2 months the Raja spent in fruitless endeavours to solve the riddles. The nearer the termination of the prescribed period approached, the greater grew his anxiety and dread. The greater grew his anxiety and dread. At length he wrote wrote the questions in big letters on a large sheet of paper and tied it round the neck of a fast going steed with orders that he should be made to run throughout the whole Raj, that means the kingdom, and that if anybody on reading the paper could answer the questions, he should be immediately brought to the court with promises of very rich rewards. The plan the Raja had devised promised success, for within a short time there appeared before him a man named Golami, who said that he knew the answers, but he would not give them save in the presence of the emperor himself. Failing to solve the riddle himself, the Raja was forced to send for him to the imperial court. Golami further demanded a very large sum of money and the choicest jewels of great value in order to bring the matter to a happy issue, and being furnished with all that he desired, he started on his journey, which he accomplished in about a fortnight. He then hired one of the grandest houses in the emperor's capital, kept a mistress, and ingratiating himself with the smartest and most fashionable characters there, opened his doors wide to all comers. Pleasure succeeded pleasure. Entertainments of all kinds were given on the grandest scale, and alms and loans generously distributed, so that Golami soon became one of the most popular men in the city. Spending a week in this way, he one day called his friends to him and said that he desired to marry and that he had depended upon their selection. They said that there was a bride in every way worthy of him, who, however, would not, in consequence of a vow, listen to the proposal except upon the receipt of 25,000 rupees in advance. Golami at once loosened his purse strings and handed over the sum, not a piece of which, however, found its way into the girl's hands, the entire sum being divided among his false friends. To keep Golami still in their power, they found for him a girl of the vilest and most treacherous nature, and her he brought into his house as his wife, though he knew her to be a bad woman as soon as he cast eyes upon her. On the third day after the marriage, Golami, who had been out, returned from his banker with a vast sum of money and some jewels and gems of the first water. This he had previously received from his employer and had deposited in the bank. He showed them to his wife and told her that they were the effects of a robbery perpetrated by him on a merchant traveling along the highway, and that a royal proclamation had gone forth offering a rich reward to announce giving information against him. He again went out on pretense of some business, and his wife, taking advantage of his absence, went to the police and informed them against her husband. Though they had heard nothing of the robbery or of any royal proclamation, they believed her when they came to know that she was the wife of the offender, and at once sent men with her for his arrest. They found him at home waiting for the police, and they at once laid hold of him and took him to the emperor, who, instead of leaving the judgment of capital offences, of which highway robbery was one, in the hands of the judges appointed by him, took cognizance of them himself. And after a mere formal trial, Golami was sentenced to death and sent to prison to wait there till the moment of execution. The fact was noised abroad, And the prisoner's former mistress, hearing of it, hastened to him and comforted him. She engaged counsel to defend her lover with all the money she had, and Molvis to offer prayers for him. Not content with these services, she volunteered to remain in prison with him, if thereby she could in any way cheer him up. Golami sent message after message to his friends, but they neither came to see him nor sent a word of recognition. They had become his wife's lovers, and with her they merrily talked over his troubles. At length, the day of execution dawned. It happened also to be the last day of the 3 months allowed for the solution of the question sent to Raja Prithu, on which Golami was laid in chains to the place where he was to be executed. There was a large crowd of spectators, in the midst of whom were his false wife and friends. The poor mistress, whose heart was breaking at the sad prospect before him, was waiting in a corner with swimming eyes raised to the face of him whom she loved more than life. The block of wood on which his head was to be placed before the falling of the fatal axe was ready, and the emperor arrived to give the final command. But that command was not to be given, for the man under sentence of death cried out that he had a word for the ears of the emperor, to whom it was of paramount importance. Being told to speak his thoughts, he said that they must be whispered in the emperor's ears, so that others might not hear them. The emperor, fearing some foul play, would not at first allow the near approach of him whom he had sentenced to death, but he was at length prevailed upon by the prime minister to do so. Golami laid close up to him with his hands pinioned and his legs bound, brought his face near to the emperor's ears, and whispered, "I am no breaker of the law. I am as innocent as your majesty. I was commissioned to answer the 4 questions you sent for solution to Raja Prithu. Will you permit me to give you the answers privately in your ear, or publicly, so that your subjects may know them?" The emperor, thinking that if there was truth in what the man said, he had wronged him grievously, and that therefore it would be just to exonerate and even to reward him in public, bade Golami give the answers aloud. Thereupon the latter cried out, "Reverend Sire, here are the solutions of your questions. The answer I have found in my experiences here. As to the first question, can there be poison in nectar? Look at that ugly creature, superficially so attractive, waiting there to see me die. She is my wife, and instead of the nectar which I expected to find in her, I have found poison. To try her, I gave out that I had committed a robbery, and thus made myself liable to be punished with death. And no sooner had she heard me than she sped to the police to denounce me. With regard to the second question, I have found nectar in a vessel of poison. That woman there, of evil repute, whose heart is supposed to contain poison, has been to me like life giving nectar. She has done for me a service as great even as that which a dutiful wife could have done. As to the third question, my false friends, there are dogs in human form. They ate at my expense. Even the morsels that I rejected were seized by them voraciously, and just as a dog licks the feet of its master, but when rabid, bites him to death. So have these men flattered me, and when maddened by greed of money and a desire to enjoy the uninterrupted companionship of the vile woman whom I made my wife, have rushed at me to bite me to death. And as to whether a donkey can possibly rule a kingdom, I pray your majesty to look at yourself. You are an emperor, but have you not proved yourself a donkey? In sentencing me to death before thorough investigation? The emperor looked utterly abashed and remained speechless. At length, he invited Golami into the palace and entertained him for several days, and then sent him away with rich presents. But these were nothing in comparison with what Prithu gave him after his return. He bestowed upon him the half of his kingdom and the hand of his daughter, though the bridegroom was a Mohammedan and she a Hindu. Caste restrictions were not so strong then as in later times, and so it was not difficult for the Raja to reward his deliverer in this signal manner. Our story ends here, for Bhabaghure has not told us what afterwards befell the several factors in this drama. So, today we are ending our story here. So, আমার কথাটি ফুরলো, নোটে গাছটি মুড়লো, কেন রে নোটে মুড়লি, গরুতে কেন ঘাস খায় না, কেন রে গরু ঘাস খাস না, রাখাল কেন ঘাস দেয় না, কেন রে রাখাল ঘাস দিস না, বউ কেন ভাত দেয় না, কেন রে বউ ভাত দিস না, খোকা কেন কাঁদে, কেন রে খোকা কাঁদিস, পিঁপড়ে কেন কামড়ায়, কেন রে পিঁপড়ে কামড়াস, কুট কুট কুট. So, my dear friends, at the end of the story, I must say what we actually learn, what we have learned from this story is, in our life, in our life, those persons who are very near and very close to us, they actually matter. They actually matter. If they are good in their intention, then they can prove themselves as the nectar of our lives, or otherwise they can be fatal for our existence in that sense. And no one can be judged by their outer cover. We can see a very beautiful face with a very warm and very beautiful heart. We can see a very ugly face in that way, which is not have a certain proportion, mathematical proportion, so that it is not it is not pleasing our eyes, or it is not very easy to look at to find the similarities or the proportions which actually intrigues us to confirm them as a beautiful proportion. But still they can have a very most soft and most warm heart and most honest mind of all. Or it may be a very cruel heart with a very beautiful face, or a very cruel heart with a very ugly face. So nothing is absolute till we can until and unless we are judging them not in a vicious way, with a very friendly manner, but with experience we can understand who is good and who is bad in general. And similarly, friends are one of the crucial ingredient of our lives. But if they are not true friend, then they are the most dangerous one than our enemies. So choose your friends very carefully. We have to. And what about the last question, which the answer, or the question which it has, what it did taught us, what did it teaches us teach us, sorry for my wrong grammar. What did it teach us? Actually, it teaches us teaches us that if you are in a higher rank, then you must have some crucial crucial retrospection power. With a calm mind and with a very calm mind, but with a very keen look into each and every details, so that one who is in the hierarchy, they can judge the actual situation, and the and they can take out the actual solution. Otherwise it will lead to a very bad outcome. So with this, today Shamita is bidding you goodbye. So tomorrow maybe we will start a new story, or we will start the new story from this book only from the next week. So till then, have a very good week ahead. Shubhamastu.